I do want to get back to this breaking news that we started off the program with. A source, again, briefed on the Gaza ceasefire negotiations, telling Fox News, quote, a ceasefire and hostage release deal has been reached. I want to bring in Edward Lawrence. He's at the White House with whether the president has responded to this breaking news. Edward.
Yeah, President Joe Biden has not responded as of yet to this. They're waiting for confirmation from their side before we do expect a statement from President Biden on this. A Hamas official is also telling Fox News that they have reached an agreement. Now, we are told from Fox News that Qatari Prime Minister himself was actually inside the room for the end of these negotiations and pressed Hamas to accept this deal. It's going to roll out in 3 phases. In all, there's going to be 23 hostages that are alive that will be released. 10 hostages that are believed to be dead will be released. The bodies of those will be brought home to laid to rest. There are also going to be young girls in the first round, as well as humanitarian hostages that will be released in this. Again, the pause of this is going to be 42 days, or about 6 weeks in a pause in fighting. And just now, President-elect Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, we have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. Thank you. You see that right there. His representatives were involved in this. Now, the White House stressing, though, that this was Jake Sullivan as well as their representatives on the ground for weeks that had worked, months actually, worked with these groups in order to get these hostages released. At the end of this process, President Trump had his delegates in the room to try and work through and see what kind of agreement could be done. Now we see that there is an agreement we're hearing out of the Middle East from sources there. So again, in exchange for these hostages, both dead and alive, being released, Israel will have to give up what we're told hundreds of Palestinians. We don't have an exact number on that again. But again, this is good news for some. The ceasefire will be in place. Families will get some alive, 23 at least people home, hostages to their families. And then you can have 10 others who will have final closure on their family members who have been in captivity for more than a year.
And we're looking at these live pictures coming out of Tel Aviv right now. This is about the hostages and the families of these hostages, those that are remaining. And again, I'm glad you're confirming, because we don't know who is alive and who is not. Some of the Israeli officials have been somewhat evasive when you ask, is this hostage alive or dead? That's going to be part of the story. Are they going to be returning individuals that are alive, or are they going to be returning bodies? And I don't know, but go ahead.
In the first phase, it will be the folks who have survived the process, as well as some who did not survive the captivity here. And it's just heartbreaking for those families, we have to say, to finally, one, get closure for their loved ones. But then the others, we don't know what condition the hostages who are alive are coming back in. We also don't know if any Americans are involved in the first round of releases. Again, this is going to be rolled out in phases. So we'll get some bodies of hostages, some alive hostages, and then as those progress, more hostages will be released to a total of 33.
And Edward, too, I just want to bring in this, and this is something that the Journal is pointing out, and I think it's a very clear point that we need to make, is that the fact that this has been similar to the deal that's been on the table for months, as you've reported from Washington, as we've talked about here. But Hamas in those last few months has been more battered and more put back on their heels in the region. And you also have the Israelis who have, let's be honest, very aggressive and somewhat brilliant in the killing of not just Hamas officials, but Lebanese leadership. And then you also had that strike in Iran, which was unbelievable at the time, Edward.
Yeah, you also have to remember that it was President Joe Biden who said to the Israelis, do not go into Rafah. He pressured them not to do it. The Israelis did it anyway. And that goes to the point where they were able to get a critical Hamas leader and take that person off the board, so to speak. Because of that, it put more pressure on Hamas to maybe come to this agreement. But we're told through Fox News sources that it was the Qatari Prime Minister at the end of this who ultimately said, do it, pressured the Hamas officials in order to come to this agreement. As we know, we're days away from President-elect Donald Trump coming into office, and he has said that he will not stand for the hostages being still in custody. So, we don't know exactly what the president-elect was going to do, but he did say it would be, hell on earth in that region if the hostages were not released. So that could have also added pressure that the transition's coming, and there would be no more of the appeasement that we've seen, and it would be more of a hard line coming from the White White House next week.
All right, and I know that one Trump official, incoming Trump official, nominated official, was part of those negotiations. Edward, please come back if you get more details from the White House, in particular, if we do hear from the current president, and that is President Biden.